is good. Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Karen Morton. I'm the Northeast Regional Director for the Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida, and we are delighted to be here to talk with candidates in Clay County running for the Clerk of the Court. This should be an interesting session because a lot of us don't know about the Clerk of the Court. So this should prove interesting to all the voters, help them make a decision. We have both candidates who are on your ballot here with us today. First of all, Tara Green, and second, David Coughlin. I will introduce our moderator. He is a retired Navy captain. He is a former congressional candidate in District 4 and the national spokesman for the We Can Be Heroes Foundation, Mr. Ryman Schoaf.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. Candidates, so glad you're here today. I'm going to go over a couple rules and kind of lay the groundwork, and then we'll get right into it. So we'll start off with a 2-minute open, and since Mr. Coughlin has deferred to Mrs. Green, you will go first. It is Mrs., correct? Mrs., okay. So you'll start off with Miss, okay? I just want to make sure I have that correctly. Miss Green will start first with the 2-minute open. As we move into the questions, I will do my best to make sure I let you know that you're going to be the first to speak so you're not caught off guard, and I'll tell you how much time you have to answer that question. You don't have to take the time if you don't want to, but I'll let you know what that time limit is. If you get within 15 seconds of being at the end of your time, you'll get this signal. Okay. If you've reached your time limit, we'll wave Old Glory at you. And if you decide to keep going, you're going to get the dreaded cowbell. Okay, if what we would like to see today is that as you're addressing the individuals that are going to be voting for you, even though I'm asking the questions, I'm not asking you to answer the questions for me. Just pretend as if the room was filled with an audience. The camera in the back is going to be where you need to look. So once I ask you the questions, please address the audience and face the camera because they're going to be zooming in on you for the live feed. If you should decide that you want to take a personal insult at the other candidate, we will let that individual have 30 seconds to respond. What we hope is that you're going to spend this time convincing voters of why they should vote for you and not trying to convince them why they shouldn't vote for the other person. Okay? So those are the ground rules, and with that, we will get started. Ms. Green, your 2-minute open. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and thank you for hosting this event. I know that a lot of the voters out there have been really interested to hear from candidates, so we appreciate the effort that you put in. My name is Tara Green. I am currently your elected clerk. I was originally elected in 2013. I got certified as a clerk in 2014, and that's obviously in my first term. In 2015, I was awarded Clerk of the Year amongst all 67 clerks in the state of Florida, so that was quite an honor. Currently, I've moved up in leadership since then, and I'm currently the president of the Florida Clerks and Comptrollers for the state of Florida. I'm also, and with that, with the 67 clerks in the state of Florida, that is also a $460 million statewide budget. I am also a member of the Florida Government Finance Officers Association, and this is a association that provides enhanced training on governmental accounting standards and principles, which are key to the office of the clerk and many facets. Also just got appointed to the Florida Courts Technology Commission. This is a 2-year appointment, and that was an appointment by the Supreme Court, so I'm honored to have that. I've been an e-filing board member since 2013, and that's important because Florida has one of the best e-filing systems nationwide. We are a model for e-filing systems and e-filing in the rest of the nation. Very involved in my community. I serve on several boards, involved in education in the community, awareness. We have a great partnership with the school district as it relates to Clay history and the historical background that we have in Clay history. And I bring in my office the professional experience that I had in the private sector. This is my first political position, and the experience that I bring is from the private sector that basically revolves around operations management, organizational development, process improvement, technology, and budget oversight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coughlin?
Good evening. I'm Dave Coughlin, retired Navy captain, 32 years, Afghanistan veteran, father of 3 productive taxpayers, all of whom are home educated by my wife of 30 years, K through 12, and graduates of Florida universities at the bachelor's and master's level. I founded, operated, and sold a Northern Virginia garbage company, which many years after we sold it is still a productive enterprise. Once upon a time, in a tiny place called the Pentagon, I resourced and held accountable annual expenditures and acquisitions of north of $1.8 billion. Did this without any scandal. And as many of you may know, some of you may not know, the comptroller responsibility will return to the clerk of court this January. As far as I know, I'm the only candidate who has budget oversight experience of this scale, in this case 5 times the Clay County budget. And that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Okay, that's the opening comments. Now we'll move into questions. Ms. Green, we're going to start with you. You'll have the first question. You will have 2 minutes to answer this question. With continued growth of the population in Clay County, what changes must be made to improve the processes and employing new technology to be sure that we can keep an ever-growing number of records accurately and without loss?
It's a great question. We're actually well on our way under that in projecting the growth in Clay County. I will tell you, in the office of the clerk of court, there are 3 main components that pretty much run that office, and that's going to be the people, it's going to be process, and it's going to be technology. Technology is something that we use as a backbone in everything we do every day. We have millions and millions of images that we oversee that contain information that is available to some and not available to others. So making sure that we continue down the path of leveraging technology to make it a user-friendly system, but yet a safeguarded system, given the amount of records and information that we keep on behalf of the Clay County taxpayers. So I would say, to answer that question, we need to continue exactly what we have been doing, which is leveraging as many innovative technological solutions that are cost effective and sustainable for our citizens.
Okay, even though there's just 2 of you, if you feel the need for me to repeat the question, I'll repeat as many times as you need, because this is for you and educating the voters. Okay, I just want to get that out. Mr. Coughlin, you're next.
I'll circle back to my experience in the Pentagon resourcing, in many cases, information technology programs. The issues such as large data, security. In fact, I'm a member of InfraGard, which is a FBI private sector partnership dealing with cybersecurity matters. Anyway, the issues regarding large data and the security of large data and the cost for a large enterprise. I have that experience as well for roughly 750,000 users, not just the 75 users that are at the clerk of court. So I'm sensitive to the issues, and to the extent good work is occurring in the clerk of court, that will continue.
Okay, for our next question, Mr. Coughlin, you will go first, and you will have 1 minute to answer this question. Since the vast majority of what you're going to do is statute-driven, what is your personal vision for changes or improvements in the clerk of court and office in the first 6 months to better meet your requirements?
Having never set foot there, at least not in quite a while, this will be a very short answer. Again, this will require an assessment To the extent that good work is occurring, it'll continue. To the extent that maybe resources are overextended, that will be addressed. I do have some concerns. One is the Clerk of Court's office has a full-time attorney. Goodness gracious, the Duval County Clerk of Court does not have a full-time attorney. They use the Office of General Counsel when they need help. St. John's does not have a full-time attorney. They use, it's either outside help or their general counsel in the county. So I will look at those things and see if this is necessary. I mean, once Clay County is 1% of the Florida population. I know we're proud of this county, but I'm not sure that we should behave as though we're Broward or some larger county that needs more resources applied at every level.
Thank you. Ms. Green?
Can you repeat the question?
Of course. So since the vast majority of what you're responsible for is statute-driven, what is your personal vision for changes or improvements in the Clerk of Court office that you see taking place in the first 6 months to better meet your requirements?
Well, changes take place every year as it relates to the Florida statutes. Our legislature meets and they either amend, abolish, or create new laws. A lot of those laws do affect the citizens of Clay County through the court system, through our record keeping, our records duties as well. And just to clarify, we have way more than 75 users of our system. Our systems has hundreds of thousands of users. We have local businesses that use our office and our systems. We have law enforcement. We have attorneys all over the state. So our users are vast and large across the state of Florida. It's just not to the employees, the 80 employees in the office. But so within 6 months, because I'm already in office, I've already got anywhere from a 1 to 3 year strategic plan, depending on the laws as they come in, as the legislature decides what they'd like I said, what they'd like to change, as well as the environment. For example, when COVID hit as a pandemic, we had to stop and regroup as a court system and decide how do we continue to offer essential services, court services to our constituents in a completely different environment. And thank goodness we were ahead of the game on technology, and we were able to turn that around in a record amount of time to keep our judiciary up and running.
For our next question, Ms. Green, you will go first for this answer this question, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. At one time, a Clay Charter amendment had split the Clerk of Courts from being the steward of the county budget, but the passage of Amendment 10 in 2018 modified the clerk's office responsibility to again being the steward of the budget. So can you tell us how this affects the job of the Clerk of Court?
Sure, and just to clarify, Amendment 10 wasn't specific to the Clerk of Court. Amendment 10 was to preserve the constitutional duties of all constitutional officers. So that's your 5 constitutional officers in a county: your sheriff, your supervisor of election, your tax collector, your property appraiser, and your clerk, and your tax collector, I think I mentioned, and your Clerk of Court. So it wasn't specific to the clerk. It did have an impact on Clay County because of what you just mentioned of a charter change. The difference for my office is that, and I want to clarify, there's a difference in establishing a budget and overseeing a budget versus the finance and accounting of a budget. So the comptroller role for Clay County and for my office, as we take on those duties of which we've already begun, is going to be overseeing the spending of the money in the budget. It's a checks and balance. It's a segregation of duties. In the accounting world, it's internal controls. And we're lucky that we have a great partnership with our county administrator, our Board of County Commissioners, and we've already successfully started that transition, and we are right in the timeline of beginning those duties October 1st of this year. So it really is for oversight for the taxpayers, and it's a model that's worked in the state of Florida in 63 of 67 counties since the beginning of the Florida Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Coughlin?
$350 million. It's a lot of money to each of us individually. Compared for a mid-sized rural county like Clay County, which represents 1% of the state of Florida, it's a tiny budget. And yet we're going to have now a second layer of oversight. You can say that's nice, checks and balances, but we've had no scandal for 20 years while the comptroller function was with the Board of Commissioners. This will add an additional layer of cost and invite political influence. You can imagine there will be people aligned with political action committees, people who have other ambitions in this county who will no longer have to go to just 5 commissioners, but maybe they can just go to one elected official called the Clerk of Court Comptroller and apply some leverage there, because with this extra layer, the Board of Commissioners can no longer operate in the manner that they have for the last 20 years.
Okay, thank you. For our next question, Mr. Coughlin, you will go first. You have 1 minute to answer this question. How many terms, if you're elected, how many terms do you intend to serve as Clerk of Courts? And do you believe that there should be term limits for your position, and whether you believe there should be or not, why?
Whether we're talking the mosquito control officer of Monroe County or we're talking the President of the United States, one term is all one man needs to deliver a vision to that office. It is very healthy for our republic that we have turnover in elected office. If you want a career, you go to the deep state, civil service, government service, whatever you want to call it. They have wonderful career paths for people who want a career in government. Again, the health of our republic depends on high turnover in elected office. Depending upon where you are in this country, you have elected officials who are in office for decades. They're de facto royalty. We gave that up in 1776. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Green?
Thank you. The clerk's office is unique. Several of the constitutional offices are unique in that they're ministerial, and turnover or incumbency. Let me back up. Incumbency doesn't always equal complacency. Incumbency can equal and yield consistency and continuity as well. There's institutional knowledge in these offices in leadership. There's a lot to learn. It's a very complex world. So I believe that tenure in the clerk's office is actually a good thing. As far as term limits, I'm term limit every 4 years. The voters get to decide whether they like the job that I'm doing as a leader, as a clerk of court, and they get to decide every 4 years, do they want me to stay in office for another term, or are they ready to see a different change out of the clerk's office? So the only way I can answer that question is that with the complexity of the clerk of court and the services that we offer, experience and knowledge are critical and key to the success of that office.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Green, you will be the first to answer the next question, and you will have 1 minute to respond. What are the staffing needs of your office, and what are your plans to improve the employee efficiency and ensure cross-training of staff?
It's a good question. It's actually something we deal with every day. Our staffing needs are based on workload. Workload is based on the users in the community. It could change from year to year. I'll say on average, we have about 40,000 cases a year. We have about 170,000 individuals that walk into the office and use our services. We have about 130,000 that call us on the phone. That can change from year to year. COVID has made a dramatic impact in the way we service our constituents and our citizens. So, being able to adjust, first of all, having highly trained individuals. Training is a big initiative of mine. I'm a big proponent of continuous training and cross-training. And because we are proponents of that, and we've implemented performance management appraisal programs, when we switched to a remote-based type environment in our court system, our employees were able to follow along seamlessly and continue to offer essential services to our community.
Thank you. Mr. Coughlin?
After 6 months, I'll have a better sense of the needs of the office. I believe right now, at least on paper, there's an authorization for somewhere around 75 full-time equivalents. It's not clear if there are actually 75 full-time people in the office. I haven't done a count. Perhaps if I'm elected, I will make that count. I understand among constitutional offices there's a distinction between the authorization and what is actually on the payroll, and then you have a little bit of wiggle room for overtime or for other ways to spend the money. Obviously, when I'm in office, I'll make an assessment, and I'll be better prepared to answer that question. Thank you.
This will be our final question before we move into the 2-minute close. This next question, Mr. Coughlin, you'll be the first to answer it, okay? And you have 2 minutes to answer the question. So how do you personally plan to move forward with administering jury service with COVID, and how do you plan to proceed considering the backlog of court cases that might be in the queue?
It would start with a stakeholder meeting. What do I mean by stakeholders? The various judges, the various attorneys that are involved, defense, prosecution, everybody who has a stake in moving this along. I'm not going to come to the table and say I have a solution, and it would be absurd for me to say I have a solution right now without even doing an assessment on that. But when you have these challenges, you bring all the stakeholders together and you have a conversation, and solutions will emerge under those circumstances. Thank you.
Ms. Green?
Thank you. I'm actually part of a workforce that's part of the bigger task force that was assigned by the Supreme Court Justice, and we do have continuity plans in place. And there are phases that we must go through as trial courts across the state. Our administrative judge is actually on that task force statewide. And so I'm very in tune with what it takes to implement jury services as it relates to being in a pandemic. I will tell you in Clay, we are taking all precautions should we move into that phase. That phase will probably come later than sooner, because our first and foremost concern is that of the public and the safety of the public and the health of the public, as well as our employees, not only in my office, but courthouse-wide. So implementing jury services back will be part of a phased approach with many variables considered for the safety of everyone.
Thank you. That now completes our questions and answers. Now we're going to move into the 2-minute close. Ms. Green, since you were first to open, Mr. Coughlin, you'll be first to close.
We talked about term limits and qualifications. I'll just focus on that. If elected, I'll serve a single term. That's all I need to have the impact I seek. Again, the health of our republic does not depend upon careerists in elected office. And again, I have experience overseeing a budget, holding accountable people implementing that budget,